Welcome to the Fire from Two Windows podcast, where we take a deep dive into different aspects of the fire service. My name is Matt Humnicke, and I am joined with my co-host Lou Cominelli. We want to express that these are our own opinions built by experiences and education while honing our craft. These are not the opinions nor directions from our various employers. We are here on our own to spur conversation and help level the playing field for all. Good evening, Lou.
What's up, Matt? How are you?
I'm well. Rested, back from vacation. Hitting it hard. Seems like every shift is 34, 38 hours and home for a few, coming back. It's a time of year where everybody's getting sick. So there's a lot of opportunity, if you want to call it that, to come in and fill the ranks. But overall, it's just everybody's got to take care of themselves, get back in the game. It's a tough time come January, February. So
Yep.
I have managed not to really get sick.
It also feels like it's the restart of our training calendar.
Yes, it is the restart. A couple things.
Day.
Oh, man. Some of them, we were just talking not too long ago. The hazmat training, some of it's a little, could be built up a little bit or reviewed. You got to start with the paper copies, SOGs, SOPs, that kind of thing. Roll into some scenarios depending on the level that your department's at.
Yep.
And then just keep going. Wintertime up here means wintertime. There's a heavy snow load right now. What are we averaging? Like 10 degrees during the day, and this is without wind chill. At night, single digits. We do have a policy. I think we mentioned it before on one of our episodes that we do have a policy at a certain when it reaches a certain temperature, sub 32, sub 30, we kind of stay in the barn unless calls are exempt from that, obviously. But we try not to freeze up everything.
And then there's no outside training underneath whatever the wind chill is, or the real feel.
And that's really what it is. It comes down to that.
And it makes it tough because we had a good day. We had a kind of a thaw to do some ice rescue last week. Temperatures got up to the 40s, and it thawed our training location out to where it would be good ice. And then the day we were going to go out and train on it, the temperatures dropped to like 5 degrees outside. And it was like, can't break policy.
Right. And that's so tough because you think ice, okay, for ice rescue training, you want frozen pond, real cold. You want to go out there and do some cool stuff, cut some holes. But realistically, that's not when people get trapped or get stuck out there. It's when it starts thinning out. They're breaking through that ice. Yep. That's the training you want to go for, which is really, as far as ice is concerned, it's the ugly stuff. It's not really fun, but it is challenging.
I just got sent a video from my buddies, non-firemen. They follow that, I think it's Rock Gone Mad on Instagram. And they had some dude on Irondequoit Bay doing donuts in his car. So
every year people do that. I've seen cars. I've seen, we were just talking about GMC Jimmys and Blazers back in the 90s, or at least the 90s version. People used to throw studded tires and do all sorts of goofball stuff out there. That one section of the bay freezes real good because it's shallow.
Yeah, you get 8 inches of ice. That's no problem for a vehicle to go up on there.
Yeah.
But every year they get a snowmobiler or some idiot when it's a little too warm out and that they don't know there's that thin area of ice, and the next thing you know, they're in the drink. We might know somebody that did that.
That's true. What do we got? Speaking of training.
Yeah, so I think a good topic, something that we both take, we do a lot of is we take outside training classes. It could be a class, it could be a conference, it could be, a lecture series. I feel some of the conferences are better than others. It seems probably in the past 5 years that a lot of smaller conferences have popped up. And these smaller conferences I feel are phenomenal. I remember when I was the training officer, I tried moving some of our budget monies around from sending guys to the big show out in Indianapolis to send them to some of the more smaller conferences One of them is no longer around for train. I mean, they still have I believe they still have like the show with like the vendors in
Hmm.
Harrisburg, but I don't think they do the hands-on training like they used to. Um, I am I've gone to Andy Frederick's training days. Now it's just called training days. 3 times. I went to the one in Lexington. I've been twice to Alexandria. If you're if you just want to sit down and listen to lectures with like-minded firemen and make good contacts, it's an awesome place to go. But what I want to talk about is when you do sign up for these classes, it could be a local class at your county facility, it could be a state level class. So what I was saying is, you got these state classes, third party conference, these third party training organizations that will come out and do classes for you, or they might have a facility that you can go take a class at, or there's these conferences where you have to travel to. I've been to a bunch. There's a bunch that I'd like to go to. There's some out of state, other state, if that makes sense. Like Oklahoma State puts on a Swiftwater conference that I've been trying to get to. It just happens to fall on my anniversary every year, and it's a tough sell to the wife to go out to Oklahoma. Um, but vetting these things and how to get the bang for your buck out of them, and what have you seen or what have you taken that seems to be the best fit for firemen. And we can start going through, what should a pro be looking at doing? What should, that 1 to 5 year, 5 to 15, and, as a senior man, 15 and over. And even then I could speak on the officers, what they should be looking at taking.
So, kind of this whole thing surrounds the idea. Before we break down by what grade you're in or anything of that nature, it's what is the definition of outside training for you personally?
Outside training to me would be any training that's not done by your department.
Okay, so would you also include that as another government entity, such as a county or a state class?
So I guess it's like the gray area because our department has hosted county classes and state classes in house, and then we've opened it up to other departments to fill out the class roster. So when I think of out of department training, is like you have to seek training outside your department. So if you have to go take a state class somewhere else, or you got to go to the county facility to take a class, obviously a third party training organizations and the big conferences, those are obviously outside training. But like I said, the gray area is that county training and or state training, outside training. To me, I think it's dependent on if you're seeking it yourself, or is your department requiring you to take. And some of the outside training that we take, our department requires guys to take it, but they still got to go seek it themselves. Where there's been rope technician classes that we've put on ourselves here in our department, and even in April we're I wouldn't say rent, I don't know what the rented for the best term, I guess. We've reserved the Swiftwater facility in Oriskany, New York, for our Swiftwater team. To me, that's kind of like a hybrid in-house outside training. But there's state classes that are put out there that have really no benefit for us taking, but guys still go take it. And then there's state classes that we need in our department to do our jobs.
So I would put, based off of that and my experience in the past, I would put everything in two separate categories, and it's really the vetting procedure, and that is who is who is signing you off at the end of each one of these classes. So let's take for the example, you go to the state level, and for us in New York State, we do have it's now broken down to an awareness operations technician levels of everything. So we still kind of, it's in limbo right now with the RTB, rescue technician basic. That's kind of your awareness level, and that opens the doors for all tech rescue stuff. I believe they're changing the name and the curriculum's kind of going to be adjusted, but ultimately it's kind of like your basics on rope. Then you have your rope operations. And then, and then you go on to, they've collapsed. It used to be Tech 1 and Tech 2. Now it's all just technician. Each one of those has this procedure that essentially is like a peer review for the curriculum. It's not a bunch of people that have some random experiences around the world, different organizations, military or industrial, and then they come together and just ad hoc a class. They do come up with a curriculum. They submit it to different places, or they each review each other's work. There is a long, and it's a very long process of this setting up a curriculum. And here's what you're going to do, and the state adopts that. So when you
Yeah,
mentioned we hit, go
I
ahead.
used to do the peer review for the rope classes.
Yeah, so you've seen that side of the thing, and that's got to be busy work too. It's also going to be a lot of fun because you get to play. But you mentioned, so you can either go to the state, so you sign up for a class and maybe it's in another county, it's being hosted in another county or at a state facility altogether. But we did that here where we had a whole bunch of new people and they had RTB. We wanted to bring them up to speed because it was getting to the point where it was like almost, I don't know, a third, would you say, third of our people did not even have operations for rope. So we put a request into the state saying we want to have this class done in house. It's not that we did our own class, it's that we essentially we put time together. Here's the schedule. Send the instructors and any equipment that you see pertinent, but we do have all the equipment that matches that curriculum requirement. The instructors come out from the state and they kind of put on that show for us right here, right at our fire department. Now, we used different buildings and stuff around town and across the county, but they came to us and helped facilitate that and ultimately did the testing procedures and everything so that it definitely met. So there's one side of that where we followed a curriculum, we used their instructors, but we did not go out to a state facility to get that done, which traditionally I think most departments, doesn't matter how big it is or how small it is, paid or volunteer, you send people out one at a time to a facility. Those are both, really there's no argument that is a super vetted procedure. But there's the other category, and that is, who is that governing body? Like, one that comes to mind, since we're on the topic of rope, and I'm big, I love rope. That's what got me involved. CMC, okay, that is one of the companies that manufactures a lot of our equipment that we use. They put on their own classes. Now, this is not a fire department, but they can put on their own classes. They do meet the requirements of NFPA, so on and so forth. So they will put them on. Sometimes in those classes, there might be police officers, there might be industrial specialists, and then of course firemen as well. Firefighters. You could have a whole mixed bag. They do have a technician class, operations class, and all other stuff. Those do not carry over 1-to-1 to cover the requirement for your status as a technician in New York State. It gives you the knowledge, yes. It does not give you the certification on the same wavelength. So I may have misspoke a little bit. That CMC class does not go into that unvetted category, but it is something it's like super outside training that's not within the fire realm altogether 100%. Other people can come join. It is a robust program. It is the manufacturer's recommendation because it's put on by the manufacturer. So it's kind of in limbo, but I would put that more in the vetted program, whereas that second column of unvetted, and that's a harsh term for some organizations, but it could be a company that just, if you and I wanted to start a company and we had no credentials in teaching any of these topics, and we just started going around and people started paying us, we can't give those organizations or those individuals something to take home and say, hey, I've met the needs of my department or met the needs of my state because I went and took the Matt and Lou extrication class.
Right.
Whereas if I had the certification to instruct that by, for us, it'd be New York State or above, and I put that on and I put their name in a system to give them true credentialing, that would be a different thing. And that's where some of these organizations start popping up because of a need for training, but not enough of the instructor portion, instructor development portion, that we start getting lost in the jumble. And I think that's what we're about to focus on for the rest of this.
Right. And like if you do go to like CMC or ropes at rescue, New York State, and I would assume most other states would give you reciprocity in. So like they issue us in New York State, and I know we're talking ropes because it's just an easier topic to go back and forth because you have these the manufacturer puts on the training. It would just be like if Hearst put on training for extrication or TNT Tools put on extrication training. But if just for the sake of the argument, when you go take a CMC class or the ropes at rescues class, they have a very strict curriculum that they're working off of. And if you were to take that class without taking the New York State class, I am almost positive that you could submit that through your training officer and through the New York State Office of Fire Prevention and Control, and they would give you reciprocity and issue you your state certificate as a rope technician. Where, like you
Yes.
said, if you would just take there's a training company that's out of the capital region, and they do a very good job with stuff. They I believe they just hosted International Tech Rescue convention out there. But I don't know if their training, just because I know some of the instructors that work for them, but I don't know if their training gets reciprocity through the state. And that's if your department needs those certificates to satisfy JPRs or training requirements, that's one thing you have to be very cognizant of when you take these classes is will they correlate over to the state? Will the state accept these for your training records?
Right. Yeah, and that's one that comes up. The topic of conversation comes up a lot. What if I need a truck company course, but the state doesn't come out? I know Matt and Lou have the authorizations by the state to teach that class. Well, if we came out as the Matt and Lou Company Incorporated LLC, whatever, and taught you truck company stuff, it's the same thing. That's great. You got the knowledge component, but we cannot provide you with anything that signs you off on that cert to say, hey, I have this pro board certification or I have the state certification for truck company. You'd still have to go to a class. Now, if you went to a state or a county class that we happen to be the instructors doing, it's all built in.
Right. The
Same
one
knowledge, you know?
the one thing, and this is kind of off topic, and it baffled my mind was there's a city fireman. He's a boss, and he was asking me because he was a former Coast Guard. He still might be in the reserves for the Coast Guard, and he was a ice rescue trainer for the Coast Guard. He had all certifications for ice rescue through the Coast Guard, and the state refused to give him reciprocity for that training. It's like this. Who else is going to be
Probably
better?
better.
Right. Who else is going to be better at that than New York State? But it's just one of those things. But talking about we vetting, and that's one thing we, as a training officer, I really didn't care whether the training records were going to correlate with your New York State training, because the one thing on the career side for New York State is that we're required to have 101 hours of in-service training, and it's very kind of lenient of how you get that training as long as it's documented properly. So if I had a dude or a female go out and take training at some third-party training organization, or they went to a conference, and I looked at what classes they took, I would just create a drill report for them that satisfied their training for that topic into the 101 hours. So even though you might not get a state certificate that you did tower rescue at a conference, I can still, as a training officer, document that you did 8 hours of ropes and knots, 8 hours of tools, and these are all New York State fire brigade codes that you have to worry about if you're a training officer on the career side. Um, but I could document those training hours. So if it, guys on the job here don't ever really fall short of their training hours because we do so much training in house. But if there was a chance that, oh man, God forbid somebody went out injured, but he happened to go to a conference in April and did 16 hours of hands-on training, and then he took 7 hours of lecture while he was at that conference. That's 23 hours of training right there that I could make up within his training record for the 101 hours.
True.
So even though you might not get a state certificate, even though you might get reciprocity through the state for whatever courses you might take, there's still benefit to going to outside classes. And some of these outside classes that are these conferences and instructors that are popping up, it's almost like they're the counterculture to what the norm has been, I would say, to the bigger conferences that are around. Because I gave one lecture one time at the New York State Fire Chiefs Conference, and I never did it again. And I don't know why. I submitted multiple papers or calls for papers, I think they call it, calls for presentations for the big show in Indianapolis. Never made it. And it's funny because when you submit the papers and then you get rejected, they always write back, you should really try writing an article and getting it published in the magazine. And I laugh because I've had 4 articles published in that magazine. It's like, it's just a canned response to the people that they deny, So, but like getting at, so you have these instructors that are probably sick of getting denied teaching the craft that they want to teach and they're passionate about. So they kind of just give the middle finger to these established conferences. You know what? And they're like, I'm going to go do it on my own. And it's tough to vet those newer ones, even though their content is probably phenomenal. It's just, unless you know somebody that's been to that conference or knows that person kind of personally, or maybe through a, 7 degrees of Kevin Bacon type of thing, how do you justify sending someone to one of those shows or trainings? There's that one that happens out in Syracuse. They put on a conference, a rescue conference in September, and then they have these pop-up trainings that happen in one of the volley departments that's just outside of Syracuse. And I knew the instructor just from, my travels out to that way, and the training looked phenomenal. I never had the chance of taking it when I was a training officer. It was just the timing was never right. But the guys that I would send out to that training, and that was one thing I would do as a training officer. And if you're a training officer and if you are questioning whether or not these small third-party training companies are good or these small little conferences are good, don't blow your wad and send like 6 guys. Send 1 or 2. Then have them report back and say, hey, this is something guys should be taking. This is some good hands-on training, or this is a really good lecture series. Guys should be really benefit guys taking that. And that's what happened when I think I sent maybe 2 guys out to this hands-on training in Syracuse. And when they came back, I said, how was it? And they said, it was some of the best hands-on training we've ever done. And we need to send more guys out there. And I was like, okay, I'll make it happen. And I pulled money from other things we had going on, and I made sure we sent guys out there anytime they had training going on. Because the report back was, every time guys came back, this is the training we should be doing. This is the type of training we should be going to. This is where the money should be spent if we're going to send guys to outside training.
Yes. It's definitely on the individual, especially some of the young guys. They see something cool online. They try to seek out some of this training. They may not know whether or not, is it good training or is it not? It looks cool. I want to go. And sometimes they can fall a little bit short, I guess, yeah, like fall short. If they go to it, they're like, hey, I learned all this really cool things. I want to change all these things at work. But sometimes they're not aware that some of the stuff that's being put out there might, how do you teach a new guy to suss out or vet the program that they want to go to? Is this somebody looking to just make a buck, or is this somebody looking to change culture or change a dynamic, sees a fit for the fire service that needs to change, and they're out there making it happen by direct action? You got to be able to do that. Some people that have a few years on, especially you're 10 year and over, and it's not just about time in the seat, it's really by experience based. But regardless, they kind of get a better feel for what is being delivered before actually going to that class. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah. You can't send the new guy out to these training. I mean, you can, and
You
they're
can,
gonna
yeah.
they're gonna benefit from it, but they're gonna have a tougher time vetting it for you rather than a 5, 10, 15 year guy going out to that training just because they just don't have the experience and they don't know what they don't know. And I mean, I hate to say these kids, but I mean, they are these to me they are kids. They get they can get bamboozled. It's almost like the snake oil salesman type of thing.
Hmm.
You know, they show them something cool or they do something, that I don't like calling them tricks of the trade. To me, it's just a trade, but they show them something that's maybe one step beyond the basics, and now they've got them hooked, and they think this is the best training there is. And it's like, well, that's the stuff we do in house anyways. So if it's like they might go to and I don't know if this exists, but they go to some third party company that's putting on forcible entry training, and they don't do anything that we're not doing in house, and they're not bringing anything back to enhance what our training is or enhance what our skills are. Then it's pointless. They're just regurgitating everything that we're doing in house, or regurgitating everything that they've done in the academy. The one thing, and I'm jumping around here because what's on my mind is talking about like the big conference out in Indianapolis. I think everybody should have a chance to go. Everybody should experience that conference once. But what brought my mind onto toning down, we used to send, I mean, back when our volunteers were prevalent here, and when we had, the volunteer department was, dumping money into the training budget as well. We used to send like 18 guys out to that conference in Indy. Then when the volunteers kind of went away, we send 4 guys a year, one from each group. And I think that's a fair number, one guy from each group, and rotate it through the guys. But when I was a training officer, we were still sending like 8 guys, and I toned it down immediately. And it's because the last year I went, it was before I was a training officer. I went out there my first time in 2006. I went there 2 more times, and then my last time was in 2017. And I took a class by an instructor, and it seemed good. It was a different title. And when I started taking the hands-on training, it was the same exact class that I took in 2006. And it was basic skills. There's nothing. This is an instructor's conference. It's in the name. And I said, we are here as company officers, senior firemen, to come here at an instructor's conference. I get it. This is, a private corporation company that's putting this on. But shouldn't these skills be, either how to teach these skills or maybe something new, not the basics of what we teach in Firefighter 1? I was like, these are Firefighter 1 skills. And the response I got, I didn't really like, but part of it was we have to cater to the lowest common denominator because some of these departments spend all their training budget to send guys out here. I was saying, if you are spending your entire training budget to send 4 guys out at your department, you need to rethink how you're spending your training budget, because there's a lot of other things you can do to get the guys trained. You could get it if you had a small department Small rural department with maybe 30 guys, 30 active guys, 30 good firemen, and your training budget is only a couple $1,000s because it's a small rural department, and you're spending your entire training budget on 1 week's worth of training to send 4 or 5 guys out there, and then they're going to bring back just the basic firefighter one skills. To me, that's a waste of money, and to me, that's stealing money from this department. Now, don't get me wrong. The show is cool. Going around looking at the apparatus and all the new trinkets and tools and innovative inventions and stuff like that. That's cool. But to spend the money on the hands-on training in the lecture series, there's better options to spend your money on. You could spend your money, probably half the budget, and bring one of these third-party companies in and get all that training for all 40 members.
That's kind of the reason why we have a little bit of a division in the training as it is. The states themselves try to do their best to encompass everything they think is what they consider meets the grade, and it takes a long time to process that stuff, filter it out, and provide something that they can not necessarily cookie cutter, but give to everybody. That process is so long that by the time it reaches people, there's somebody else champing at the bit to be like, hey, this state or this national class is taking too long to update. I know I can go out there and do a better job, so I'm just going to go do it. Well, yeah, because you're not held to the regiment of that bureaucracy and everything to manage it. So a small organization can band together, come out, do that training, right? The knowledge is getting out there. But I see it from both sides. I understand why it takes so long to develop a class, because one is the need there, and two, can I take that class once I develop it? Is it applicable? Can everybody receive it? Versus somebody that's really, gung ho and everything, and really feels that their information is going to change the game, if you will. They're just going to go right out and do it. But
Right.
it hasn't gone through that long processing to verify that it can actually be received.
And there are some companies out there, and I think these are the best ones, where they come in and teach the class, and then they give the training officer, it's almost like a train the trainer for them. They'll give the PowerPoint and they'll give all their knowledge to the members of the company officers. Say, this is everything I gave you in this class for review. Now you're not getting the experience of the instructor and the little nuances that the instructor might have that he might give throughout the course, but you have all the content to reuse for years, and then you can
Yes, yeah.
update it yourself and you can put your own twist on it. If you had a company come in and do Force Entry for you, and let's say I know one company will, if you buy their door, they will come out and they will do forcible entry training with you on the door. I don't know if they give you all the content that they get. I don't know if there's a PowerPoint because we don't have their door. But let's say they did. They come out, you buy their door, they do the however many hours of train the trainer, and they do a training for the department, and then they give you the content after. Once you receive that content, you can go out to your first due area, your fire district, and take pictures of doors. You can go and cater it and tailor it to the department that you work for or you're a member of. I think those are the most upstanding departments or training organizations that are out there.
Yeah, it's almost like they work themselves out of a job.
Right, but
Right.
that's the fire department. I mean, are there guys out there looking to make a buck off of things? Yeah, 100%. Everybody's, I got no problems with people trying to make money. But you know what's going to happen to the person that gives up all their content to that department? They're going to get good reviews. They're going to get recommended to go to the neighboring department, and they're going to get recommended to go to the next neighboring department. And then, you know what? Maybe 5 years down the road, they might have an update or say, hey, you know what? Our stuff's getting stale in house. Let's bring them back in just to see if he's got anything else going on. There's some training outfits out there that are charging firemen like $50 just to sit on a Zoom call with these people. It's like, come on, you're charging me $50 to sit on a Zoom and look at a PowerPoint. To me, that's not what this job's about.
No, no, not at all. There was one that came through our area. They came up to our county, and I think we had people attend. So it was this company that's from out of state. I don't want to name names because I think there was pros and cons to this thing. They their instructor cadre, if you will, are from all over the place. Many different departments, big and small. Some were even volunteers. But they came into town, essentially used one burn building from one of the departments, gave it up, and there were people that came from, man, I want to say like 4 different counties all
I,
over came to
I
this
think there's guys
class.
from out of the country. I think there's
They
from
came to this
Canada.
one. Oh,
Uh,
Canada, right? Yeah, okay, so even
yeah,
more.
yeah,
So a fifth county, if you will. It depends on who's listening.
right.
Yeah, I actually I'm not going down that rabbit hole. That was a mistake, but we'll leave it. We're not going to edit it out. Um,
To all our
so
friends in Ontario, Canada, we're
yeah,
sorry.
we're sorry. We'll see you soon. So this some of the evolutions they put on when I went through it, I thought they were really cool. They're very neat. But as I'm going through it, I'm also looking at through the lens of a firefighter and the lens of an instructor. And I'm like, man, you can not get away with teaching a class in this fashion. Some of it was kind of dangerous. And then, okay, years later, as I always refer back to that, was it actually dangerous, or were we showing them an improper thing because our set of rules by the state, federal, whatever says, hey, this is too dangerous? And it kind of caught me. It's like take the good and take the bad. Make sure that you are focusing on the good stuff that is applicable in that thing. That specific program that came into town, it's not for everybody. But the concept there was to give people this really, really fun time in learning their craft, trying to master, or at least go down a path to start mastering their craft. And I think that was the intent of it. However, it, it wasn't the safest out there, but there were some small things to pick off, and start applying at your home department. There was a lot of stuff. There was a can class that was really, really cool that I thought was absolutely awesome because of the rules around here and governed by the states and the counties. You can't put that as a county instructor. I can't actually put that same class on. It was really damn good knowledge, and it was an awesome experience, but
Yeah,
it violated a lot of rules, and that kind of put me in a position: do I like this company, or am I supposed to hate it? And it's neither. It's take that experience
and
away with
that's
it, and
and that's a problem. I know I'm still waiting to get some hate DMs or whatever comments on the Instagram because people know who I am and some my thoughts on some things. But firemen have been our own worst enemy when it comes to training. The stuff that has been done, there are rules because of it, but just like everything else, the way stuff goes, the needle went way too far to the safety side of training. I always, I always had this argument: does the military still use live ammunition when they train? Yes.
I believe so.
Do,
I mean,
do
definitely. But you mean coming back at them?
yeah. Do Navy SEALs go into a kill house and shoot live rounds?
You're
Yes.
gonna have to ask a Navy SEAL.
Now, do they now use paintball simulators and laser simulators to make it a little safer? Safer, 100%. But you still have to train the way you are going to fight and the way NFPA and OSHA and our state regulations say. What I mean is it what 2.5 pallets now or 3 pallets now and 1.5 bales of straw. That's it.
Yeah, it's 125 to 150 pounds of fuel. That's it that you can have in a. You're talking about for Class A burn.
Class A burning. Yeah.
That comes out to 2 pallets and yeah, about 2 pallets and a bale and a half of hay.
Right.
That's not going to
That,
produce. You're not going to get a nice stoking fire that hits the ceiling, banks down, starts snuffing itself out. When you open the door, it rips back up. You're not going to get that.
Right. And I remember this is before the. I mean, we still had the NFPA regulations. I went to another conference in New York State. It's technically a third party conference. It's one of the bigger ones, but all the instructors there were or are state instructors. They were state
Mm-hmm.
instructors at this. They're not working for the state, but they were state instructors.
Multiple
And
hats, different hat on at the time.
correct. And some of the stuff that was going on there when I was a student, I looked at it. I said, "How do you do this within NFPA regulations?" And I got the most lawyer answer there was. It was like, well, if you know the burn package and we out here did test burns and this, that, and the other thing. And the person that gave the answer is one of the most well respected firemen I know. And I was like, okay, whatever. I didn't want to get into it. And that was some of the best live fire training that I did as a student. And I was a lieutenant at the time. Some of the best live fire training that I have done as a student in my career, besides when I went down to Louisiana for another training with another third party company. And that's a phenomenal training company. Um, it was Burning in the Bayou. If you want to look up who did Burn in the Bayou, you can figure out who that training company was. But that, besides the one in Louisiana, the next best was the one I did in New York State. And if that were to happen today, I don't think many of those guys would be having jobs.
So, speaking of the Class A stuff, since we kind of started dabbling in there, this one has been it's been bugging me for a little bit. So, how do I want to word this so I don't get in trouble through my various employers? I am a county instructor for the county that I live in. The county decided to purchase us one of those dragger container buildings, and it's excuse me, not 3 stories, 3 containers. So there's 2 on the bottom, 1 on top of one of them. So it's like looks like an L from cross sectionally. And inside there's a first floor fire room, and there is a on the second floor, so the container on the top, all the way at the end, there's a small room that is also a burn room. There's a stairwell that goes up and down, and then there's kind of like a maze, and you can change out different wall patterns, however you want to dial it in. When this thing is burning, whichever direction, however you want to set it up, it produces one of the coolest fire behavior models in existence, at least that I've experienced. You can make this thing blowing so hot that it's hard to get in and put out. You can make this thing smoke up so that's just light smoke. And you're going in for an investigation. You can do anything in between. And one thing that I really, really, really like, again, big fan of the can, obviously, you can have a program where everything's a little smoky on the first floor, hazy. You make your way up to that second floor. You get to that door, and when you open it, by controlling all the variables to this building, you can have it so that you see fire in there, or you can have it so that when you open that door, you're inducing oxygen, and you start getting that light up, even to the point where if you want it to roll overhead, it can roll overhead. Now, that's for a CAN program. You can have people sit up there and have them experience, the rolling over. However you want to dial this thing in, you can snuff it down, you can build it up. But because it uses OSB, it relies on OSB, by New York State, you cannot use it.
Yeah.
So when you look at the live burn program, which all of our instructors just recently had to go through, you start looking at the regimen of that. Okay, so right off the bat, before anybody can do any live burn, you have to, one, there's got to be a plan ahead of time. Okay, and that plan has to include egress, not a fast team, but essentially a team to go in. It's usually instructors or another company to be able to go in and rescue in case something goes awry. You can only burn in the specific locations that you've mentioned in the plan. You can only enter and exit out the specific locations. You cannot deviate from the plan. I can understand why they do that. But now you look at this dragger building, okay, there's really only a couple options to come in and out. And then also there's also a roof operations portion of it as well, so you can vent from the roof. It is so cool. Once all those instructors went through it, they started realizing, hey, there's no way we're going to be able to use this thing appropriately unless we're doing just very, very basic burns over and over again, which essentially is what we've been doing in our regular Class A buildings. We're still not giving the knowledge of what really happens in a sealed up, tight knit, tight room that's got room and contents fire starting to go. What happens when I enter the building? What happens when I enter that room, that hallway? I'm adding to those conditional changes, or the crew is. And because of that, okay, so that's the plan. And then you also have to go through gear checks. Well, you take the smallest apartment with a little bit of money and you're trying to make it so they have accessibility to this knowledge and experience. And they show up, and the first thing you have to do is inspect all their gear. And the smallest little tear, the smallest little blemish, if the pants don't match the jacket, like it's all these crazy little rules prohibits them from doing it. So do you, okay, take that hit as an instructor, maybe get chance getting in trouble by letting them go, or to letting them go in and complete an operation, even if it's the smallest little hay bale fire, not necessarily this drag your building, or do you tell them, hey, you can't do it? Now you're limiting who can come to it. You're essentially shutting down their motivation as well. There's a reason, but now it's not fair for everybody.
Right.
And we're seeing it. So right now that the dragger building program is in pause until we can come up with another solution on what we're going to be the burning material and how we can get that material, so the fuel package, to still do what it was originally intended to do, which is give a kick-ass experience for these people who are unaware, or have a little experience.
Here's the last thing I'm going to say about training fires, and I would like to circle back to what guys should be taking as they progress
Mm-hmm.
through their careers. But this is the last thing I'm going to say. Are not the last round of probationary firemen, but the previous round of probationary firemen. I always knew that live fire training is always, it will always be fun to do, but I always knew it is not realistic just based off the experiences.
Mm-hmm.
What really set the tone for me was a fire we had where a probationary fireman was on the nozzle and he was not prepared for what that fire was like. He never had any small little jobs leading up to it. He never had like a can job. He never had, a small little room and contents fire. This was an entire first floor going with extension into the attic. And we almost ran out of water. And he was not prepared. He performed amazing, but he was not prepared for it. And when we got out, he goes, that was nothing like that was nothing like any fire we had in the academy. And I said,
Yeah.
yes, we
Did
tried
you see
telling
horses in there? They're feeding off of hay. I saw no hay
right.
bales.
And I think no instructor wants to injure anybody,
No.
but
No.
we cannot train our firemen, and I say firemen, firefighters, all encompassing. We cannot train our firemen to prepare themselves for what a real good job is going to be. It's just not possible with the rules that we have. And I'll die on that. That's the hill I will be willing to die on. And
Yeah.
the day I retire, it might be the day that, I say some stuff and that's why I'm retiring. But let's circle back to, all right, you're fresh out of the academy, and I will say our department, we don't discriminate. We don't say you're brand new, you can't take this class. We encourage guys to take classes, and I think that's awesome. Back when I was coming up as a fireman here, it was, if you didn't have time on the job, you weren't getting approved to go training, and that quickly changed with our former chief that just retired a couple months ago, which was awesome. So as a probationary, you just get out of the academy, you're still on probation, you're in that 1 to 5 year range. my personal feeling as a company officer and back when I was a training officer, I wanted you to concentrate on state classes. I wanted you to start building that resume up of your state certificates. Get your tech rescue certificates. Get your go out and get some of the classes that uh, when we go through our academy, they don't offer. Our academy does now. You come out with more certificates than the state academy does, but previously you wouldn't come out with engine company operations with baffled. You'd come out with truck company, but not engine company. Now our academy that we host in county, you come out with engine company operations. But there's other classes out there that besides tech rescue, there's other stuff that I feel firemen should need. And our department it's not mandated, but it's strongly recommended, strongly encouraged that you have. And from your 1 to 5 year time frame, that's what I feel guys should be concentrating on is getting it. Are they resume builders? 100%. But do you get a good wealth of experience and knowledge by taking these classes? That's what you should be concentrating on is building up your experience through training.
I've seen the older school methodology where it's I want those new guys at least for the first year to not focus on going online, finding the catalog and selecting all the classes under the sun. I want them to learn to be firefighters in our organization. And I think that is a fair assessment. Now, if they do happen to see a class, they put in through the training, it goes up the chain and comes back down. Essentially, it goes to their company officer submits it to the MTO. However, your organization does it. Sure, that's fine, but I think there should be a little bit more of an input for that company officer that's directly working with them on a regular basis. So if I'm assigned right out of the academy to an engine company, and then I say 3 months in, I put in for a rope operations class, there should be a little bit of an input instead of just saying, well, we don't want to stifle their creativity and their, capacity to want to learn. That company officer should have a little bit of a say going, hey, this person's a little underperforming right now. I just give me another month to work on getting them good with pulling the lines, doing, I hate the word basics, but doing the regular fireman stuff before they start advancing on. So that way you're not treating it as a punishment of years in the seat, but you're kind of using it the other direction of, is it a reward for doing well at your profession and wanting to continue building on that learning program? I don't think everybody should be coming right out and be like, I'm going to sign up for the next 10 classes and not be on the line for the next 10
Oh,
months. That, you
100%.
don't want that. And I've seen that happen too. It's like, where's this new guy? Apparently they've been here for 6 months, but they've been in a class somewhere else nonstop. I don't think we should just say okay to all of that.
Right, I agree. And what you hit on, what people got to realize, and especially if you're a company officer or even a chief officer, is that the fire service is fair. It is not equitable. So
Okay.
that just like what you said, if you got two guys fresh out of the academy, and one guy's a rock star, and one guy has potential, he's going to be a good fireman. He just needs work. He passed his academy, but he's still rough around the edges. He might never have been in the fire service, and you had a kid that eats up the fire department, volunteers, an explorer, and he's into the job. That's all he's wanted to do. I would have no problems, depending on his attitude, no problem sending him to training classes outside of the district and taking extra stuff. And then the other dude who still might be rough around the edges, he's like, and he wants to go, he might have other reasons. There, people have reasons for taking training. Monetary value is one of them. He might say, hey, I want to put in for that class. And it's like, no. And he might be like, well, why? It's not, he went, it should be equal. No, he went because he has his Proby book done. It's all signed off and checked off. You still have half your skill sheets and JPRs to finish up. Until you get your Proby book done, then we'll start talking about sending you off to training classes. That's what I mean. It's fair, not equal.
Yes. Yeah. I think that's a good assessment of it.
So the 1 to 5 year classes, I think we're both in a 5 year for classes. I think we're both in agreement on, taking the state curriculum, even county classes that are put on. They're it's low hanging fruit. They're cheap. They're probably the cheapest amount of. If you go to a county class, it's free, and if you go to a state class, it's maybe a couple $100, not even, to send a guy to go to the state training. From 5 to 10 years, I think that's when you should start looking at higher level training and hitting some of the lectures that are out there. Maybe some company officer level stuff, even though you might not be a company officer, but you might have the aspirations of becoming a company officer. So that 5 to 10 year, you should be looking at one, how to be the senior man, how to be an instructor level courses, maybe instructor one, then taking classes that are going to teach guys, above and beyond the basics. And then you can modify those, what you've learned, into bringing it back to your department. Because as a senior man, or if you're going to be a company officer, you're going to be relied on running drills. So you're going to need more knowledge than the probie that just came out of the academy.
Yeah.
And when at your 5 to 10 year mark, what were you taking as a fireman here?
Probably some mostly instructor and officer development courses. And not that I have aspirations to be any of those. It's learning what my boss has to go through, what they have to deal with on a regular basis, kind of understand their end of the operation, and also how to influence those people that are going to come and fill my seat as time keeps progressing. So you mentioned doing the senior man thing. There's so many. Senior man isn't a one. Once you hit a year, you're a senior man, or senior person, whatever you want to put. It doesn't matter. There's always going to be somebody a year younger than you, 2 years younger than you. There's always going to be somebody a year older than you, 2 years older than you. Somewhere you fall in line, and as each year progresses, you're going to be slowly influencing those below you, and you're going to be looking for the influence of those above you. The people above you are slowly going to fade out because they're reaching retirement and moving on to other things. You have to absorb as much as you can, but also understand that you're part of this process where you have to pass down the stuff. So you're taking what you learn from above, you're adding to it or modifying it, making it better, updating it, and you got to pass that package down to the next person. That is your role. And when you get to that 5 through 10 year mark, I think that's a super important time frame. That if you don't have a little understanding of what bosses and or instructors do, you're not going to be as effective in moving that information package down.
Yeah,
So,
I agree.
and that spawned from seeing what I like to call some slugs in the fire service. And I always said, hey, if there's something I'm gonna touch one little part, it's I'm gonna help make sure that I don't let slugs in the firehouse. There's days that I have bad days or sloppy days myself. And I hope that there's somebody out there looking over my shoulder, going, hey man, you're being a slug today. Get up, let's go. But I can't always do that for everybody else either. So I like to do that so that I can motivate the people below, just, even if it's a year younger or 10 years younger, it doesn't matter. Because once they get going, and sometimes it also works up if they're doing a great job, kick-ass job. There's some days where I'm coming in and I might be like, I could have used an hour's sleep last night. Let me just have another cup of coffee. And if they're champing at the bit right out the gate at 7 o'clock in the morning, it's hard the pride starts kicking in. Be like, if they
Yeah.
can do it, I can't let them see that I'm feeling tired today, or I'm feeling a little less than 100%. And I like to see that. So if I can continue helping keep them motivated, they're going to keep me motivated as well.
Yeah.
So
And you hit the nail on the head. Like, you have to, that 5 to 10 year mark is, I think, probably one of the more important time frames for a fireman to be at. You're in kind of like that purgatory zone. You're not a senior man. You could be taking company officer. You could be taking promotional exams at that point. You're still trying to find your path and where you want to go. And I think those are the type of classes that you have to concentrate on. I will tell you, when you move up and you become a company officer and you get in that position, so maybe that 10 year mark and up. Like for me, I've always wanted to be on the truck. I've been the the boss of the truck company at our firehouse since I was promoted. And when I got in that position, it was like that's all I wanted to. Those are the only classes I wanted to take. Do I branch out and take engine company stuff? Yeah, if the content looks good and it's interesting. And sometimes it's forced upon me because if I went down and sat through Andy Frederick's training days, and Andy Fredericks was a FDNY fireman who died at 9/11, and he was a big proponent of engine company operations. So most of that conference is engine comp. They try to do 50-50 now, engine and truck, and they throw in some Mayday stuff there. It's an awesome. I can't speak more highly of it, but I sit through the engine stuff and I pick up stuff on it. But if it was my choice, if I was going to sit there and fill out what classes I wanted to take going to a conference, 90% of the classes are going to be truck company operations stuff because that's the apparatus I work on. That's what I want to know. I want as much knowledge about the truck that I work on or type of truck that I work on and operations that I'm going to be in charge of. Could I have to be an officer on a hose line? Yes, that's a very good possibility, and it's happened. But I work on a truck. I'm the boss of a truck. That's where most of my knowledge should be, and that's where I feel like once you cross that 10-year mark and you become an officer, that's where you should be concentrating on is preparing yourself for where you work and what you want to be doing.
I think that's very fair. It's really the passion you have for your position in the operation. You feel very passionate about the truck company operations. That's where you really want to progress and make sure you're on top of your game. That's what the public relies on. In my position as a firefighter, I'm starting to look at this. Okay, so I've been teaching for a few years now, taken some officer classes, obviously a lot of instructional classes. What I realize is there is a point where you can fall into this place of stagnation that if you don't update what it is you're teaching, in other words, you got to sometimes go back out there as a firefighter and still take those classes. There isn't a line that if 5 years you stop taking hot classes because you know it all, and then the next 5 years you're going to be teaching it all. No, you have to feather it back and forth from there on out. So you learn to teach, but also you got to realize you got to learn for yourself, and that's been kind of my focus lately. Is okay, I got to get back out there and take some classes that where I'm the student learning either something I've already learned before and I'm updating or something completely new. And I'm really digging that right now. And sometimes that includes, sometimes it may not be a class. That means right now I work on a truck company. I love my truck company. I'm actually just moved over to another one for a little bit. I want to make it home. I'll make it home someday, but I got to make sure that I take time and go take an overtime shift or a swap on one of the engines so that I don't lose my firemanship card for engine work either. I'm not the best at it, but I have a responsibility to stay updated with it. So I go work on with some of those kick-ass engine guys, and they're teaching. Some of them are 2 years in, 3 years on, and they just love their passion and everything, and it's reinvigorates. Okay, guess I got to go take another engine type class too. Might as well. It's tough.
Yeah.
So with all that, with all these classes, we started this thing off with this two categories ish. There's like the vetted programs, the tried and true. Here's the strict rules, and then we have these ones that almost seem like they're unvetted or freelance stuff. Both categories have one mission in mind, and that is to make all firefighters better. One just kind of does it, as we say, John Wayne style. One takes a very slow, methodical. It's almost outdated by the time it hits. One's the safety margin. One kind of takes a risk, but for the purpose of pushing forward. How does somebody going out and taking a look at classes, maybe it's through the Instagram, maybe it's something a flyer that they saw or a poster on the Facebook, how do they know that that's good for them? What can they do to go, okay, I'm definitely signing up for that? Or Matt and Lou said this might be bad. How do I know?
So the best thing, and we were just talking about earlier today how the talking about with the young kid. how the internet ruined things for people or just made it easier. But what it, in one sense that it has made it easier for is you see guys that have taken training from this company reach out to it. You can very easily reach out to these people and say, "Hey, I saw you took training from X, Y, and Z. How was it?" Or they might say it was the best. They might say it was good, but I wish they did this. Hopefully, they're honest with you. Hopefully, you're not reaching out to one of their best friends from their volley department and say, "Yeah, it's the best training there is," type of thing. And then they come in and the training blows.
Or the one scorned person in the class.
Or the one scorned person in the class, exactly. So that's probably the easiest, least expensive way is to reach out through social media, or maybe somebody that took the class and reach out to them. The next best way I feel is like what we did here was, all right, there's this training coming up. They're new and upcoming. It looks good on paper. I'm going to send 2 guys out to it. And I'm not going to send the 2 newest guys out. I want to send someone that's got at least 5 years on, maybe a company officer as well. I'm going to send them out, and they're almost like scouts. They're going to do some intel work for me. Then they can come back. They could say this training was bullshit, or they can come back and say this training is legit. We should be sending guys to this training all the time. Or it could be in the middle, and that's when you have to make a decision: are we going to continue sending these guys to this training, or are we not going to continue sending guys to this training? I think that's probably your best bet, but you got to spend money to do that. The other way is you're not spending any money, but you're relying on someone you might not know to give you an honest answer of how the training was.
You're crowdsourcing reviews.
Right.
And that's, I think that's a great way to look at it. Just keep in mind that a lot of people put reviews up when they complain, and people fail to review when they had something really, really good. Not always, but that is a kind of a known thing. People will always post when something sucks. Review something when it sucks. Not everybody reviews when it's something good. Look at it. Go to your online marketplaces and stuff, and type in something. Look at all the reviews. Yeah, there's some good reviews, but there's a ton. Everybody that had a bad experience will be saying something. So.
To me, the biggest turnoff for me, and when I was the training officer, and still is the biggest turnoff, I just roll my eyes when I see it, is when I feel guys are someone is charging way too much money for something. And it's like, what are you charging this money for? I keep going to a Zoom call. Like, you're charging $30 to sit through an hour's worth of Zoom call of a PowerPoint that hasn't been updated in 10 years. All you did was change the colors a little bit. Or you sit through, you go, and this is just relatively, it's cheap, but we sat through, there's a lecture series that goes through around here, and the instructor changes the title, but he's got a name and he's got letters on the back of his jacket, and it brings people into the seats. It sells the crowd out, but the content has been the same for the past 5 years, 6 years, 7 years. So when I was a training officer, and I still kind of recommend that to the training officers, I was like, if you see this lecture series come through and you see this name, if someone's been there before, they might not want to go again. Send somebody that hasn't been, because they'll still get stuff out of it. It's still a phenomenal lecture. But I don't want to waste my time and the district's money of going to a lecture that I've been to 3 times previously.
Yeah, and that's just a easy understanding. It's for the new people, the next crop of people to come through and see that.
Right, but they'll trick you. They'll change the name. They might change a word or two in the title of the program, but then you sit down and the lecture starts, and it's the exact same program that you sat through the year before and the year before that. That frustrates me. That frustrates me a lot.
I can see that. Yeah, I haven't experienced that yet, but I know which one you're referring to. I did it once. I just kind of Okay, learn that. Move on to the next one. I'm not going to go back and
It,
through that
it's
same course.
it's not a knock, and by no means is a knock on the instructor or the people putting on the conference or the lecture series, but just if it's the same program, just say it's the same program. And I've experienced this at countless conferences or lectures or even hands-on training where they just change the name, but it's the same exact thing that they did the previous year or 5 years ago, and it's like, come on, come up with something new, or just don't do it. Let some of these new instructors come up through the ranks. I bet you they have a fresh look on something. One of the best. It was a retired RFD guy. I might have mentioned this before in a podcast that we did. I don't know. I can't remember. Very well respected city fireman. He did 20 years here. He did also a career out in the West Coast. And when he retired, we asked him, "Are you still going to instruct?" And he's like, "No." And it's like, you have 40 years of firefighting knowledge and you're not going to instruct anymore. And he's like, "Look it, when I'm on the job, I can say I am the captain of truck, whatever." And at the time, that truck was one of the busiest trucks in the nation. And that carries a lot of clout. So these new people, oh man, he's captain of a truck, whatever, he knows his shit. When you're retired and you had this 21, 20, 19, 18, 19, 20 year old that's sitting in these chairs in front of you that are listening to you speak, and you say, "I am retired," that's all they hear. They don't hear retired out of truck this or retired out of engine this. And you lose clout.
What if it's somebody who's retired from a career department, but they still volunteer and they're instructing? How do you view that?
Well, I'm a little older, so I show them that I can't put myself in their shoes as an 18, 19-year-old, how their mind works anymore. I mean, an 18, a lot different back then. But there are retired, very well respected firemen that are still volunteers, that are still instructing. They have a lot of good content, but I feel some of the content that they're putting out is, one, it's dated. Two, they haven't been on a hose line or up on a roof in probably 20 years. So maybe they should stick to command classes because that's what they've been doing for the past 40 years. But their name sells seats. And I'll leave it at that.
All right. That's fair. That's fair. So we just got to be aware of the classes we're trying to sort out or seek out. We're not saying don't go to classes. We're not saying that there's stuff that's out there trying to trick you. We're just saying that if you really, really want to be the best in your position, you want to hone your craft, you really have to understand how to take the good and the bad, accept the stuff that works for your department, and sometimes you have to pick out and throw away the seeds of stuff that just it's not applicable. It may not be applicable to your department, but it could be applicable to somebody else's. And you have to understand that there are people just trying to sell some stuff to keep this thing moving, and it might be a little stagnant. Okay, I don't think there's a lot of oil salesmen out there, as you put it there, Lou. But there's some stuff that you really got to pay attention to it. Don't take every single class you take. Don't take with 100% and go, "Oh, this is what they said to do, so I got to change everything." They're giving you an option. Always look at that. They're giving you another option. See if it works. Yeah, what is it that we always say in the academy that kind of it's just one of our canned answers is there's I'm not telling you, that you only got to do it this way. I'm just giving you another tool for your toolbox,
It's
type
not
of
wrong.
thing.
It's not
It's
wrong.
not
It's
wrong.
different.
It's different. Exactly. I think that's one of the greatest sayings. And the instructors that know that it could be a little edgy will be upfront with that. say, hey, this is, this might come close to violating NFPA. We're going to do it anyway. It's up to you to understand that difference, and there's instructors that will push that through.
Yeah, like I said, I think just to reiterate, firemen that are just getting on the job, they should concentrate. They should take all the state classes. If your state has a state fire training program and they have state certificates out there for every aspect of the fire service, you're 1 to 5 years on that job. You should be trying to get as many certificates as possible. Then concentrate on maybe maybe some of the harder technical rescue stuff like structural collapse, trench, and stuff like that as you move forward. But the state classes, as much as some guys think they are what they are the foundation of our training, at least in New York State. You really can't do much without those classes. And some of the instructors we have are phenomenal instructors. They're
Yeah.
top-notch instructors, a wealth of knowledge. They have years of experience. They've been to fires. They know what they're talking about. And a lot of the best, some of the best ones are both career and volley. And there are some instructors that are just been the volley. They're probably better than some of the paid instructors that I know. But the state classes, guys in New York State should really concentrate on getting those hammered out within their first 5 years, and then concentrate on getting this upper level stuff. And even some of the upper level stuff is in the state classes. Like we said, you're instructor 1, officer 1, instructor 2, officer 2. But yeah, vetting is probably the most important thing you can do, though.
So I believe you have, there's a conference coming up locally, right? Coming up, and you got a little seat on that ticket.
No, not this time.
Not this time.
No.
Usually you do. So I thought I saw your name on something coming up. But when you do those, how do you put that together? Because it's not like sometimes it's a lecture, sometimes it's like a hot training. It doesn't necessarily, it's not a straight up full on truck company class designed by New York State or designed by the county of whatever. How do you piece that together without violating a rule, but making it so that anybody can, it's an all play?
Like, what do you mean, just submitting the class or what?
Yeah, submitting the class. How did they know? Oh, he knows what he's talking. They just take it for your word and let you run with it, or is there
So
certain criteria when
it
you're building
depends
a
on
class?
it depends on the conference. Like the smaller one, the company that co-sponsors it, one of the founders came up to me and asked me if I was willing to do something. I said yeah, and so I submitted something, but I just don't think it was in the works for this year, which is not a big deal for me. So that was more of a personal thing because it was just it's a smaller conference. It's still a great conference. It's local, and you're talking about the one that used to be all EMS.
Yes.
Yeah, and originally that was founded as all emergency services, so police, fire, and EMS, and then somehow it just went all the way EMS, and that company that co-sponsored it is bringing it back to the fire side as well. But that was small enough where they just reached out and say, "Hey, do you have anything you want to do a lecture on?" I said, "Yeah." So I submitted it, but I didn't go anywhere. Like I said, no skin off my back. Other ones, some of the bigger ones, I got reached out to again by another one. I don't know if that's going anywhere. We'll see. Like I said, if they don't ask me, no skin off my back. I told them, even if you don't have me present, I'm probably still going to be down at the conference anyways. But once you get to the bigger ones, there is a formal process. They'll put out, hey, we need a call for presentations. You submit almost like an executive summary of what your presentation is, and essentially there is whoever their executive board is who sits there and picks of what's going to be presented. Now this is just for lectures. I wouldn't even try to submit for hot training as an instructor because just too much work. I don't have the time for that. But on the lecture side, you submit for the call presentations, and essentially, like I said, they had this executive board that reads through an executive summary of your presentation, which could be a 90-minute presentation during the conference time, or a 4-hour presentation during pre-conference workshops. And they're supposed to make a decision off of an executive summary of your presentation of whether you make the cut or not. Now, if you know people, you might have a better shot of getting in there. Or if you have a well-known department name on the back of your coat, you might have a better shot at getting in there. They always say writing articles is a great shot of getting into certain conferences. Our buddy, who hopefully is going to be on the podcast, he's got a ton of articles in the other magazine, and he's presented at their conference before. And it's funny because he's gotten rejected from the magazine that I've had been published in, and he's gotten published in the magazine. I've never submitted to that magazine. And then he's taught at that conference. And I was like, well, maybe I picked the wrong magazine to
just
try
flip
to get
flopped.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But there's a process. The hands-on training. The other one, the one that's the statewide conference here, I just emailed the director and say, hey, you looking for any content? And they're like, yeah, we actually got a couple slots to fill. And I said, well, I got this program. And they were like, yeah, all right. Sometimes it's just that simple.
Perfect. What else?
I think we rambled enough about training and going on and vetting it, and kind of we're on some soapboxes there. And
we love seeing people train and going out experiencing. When you have people that come up to you, whether that's somebody else. I've had a ton of guys that we work with come up and say, hey, what's the next class I should be looking for? I don't necessarily know all the answers for them or have an answer for them, but it's nice to see them more interested in this job than just showing up for the day and asking, hey, how do I get through to the end of the shift so I can go home? It means more to them. And when they start reaching out to you, that's very empowering. It's like, oh man, that kid's taking all these classes. I better step up too and gotta make sure I don't fall behind.
Hey, just to interrupt, I'm looking at the conference schedule. I am presenting.
I thought so. I thought I saw your name on it.
I didn't even know. I'm looking at because It's funny because when I looked at the conference schedule, I just looked on the one column where most of the fire stuff was. I didn't realize there was a second column where the fire stuff was. And I'm looking through, I'm like, I'm on here twice. So I guess
Oh, great. So if anybody's going to this, this is the STEP conference, look forward to Lou Cominelli's How to Wing It in the Fire Service.
Yeah, there you go. So now I got to put that in the calendar before my wife gets mad.
Yeah, I saw that on there. I was going to touch base with you on it.
Oh, thanks for letting me know. So I double checked.
Yeah, God. Oh, Jesus.
Yeah, well, there you go.
No, I'm sure you got this. It's all put together though, right?
Yeah.
Like, okay, all right. So you're not winging it. With that, get out there. Keep being a student of the craft. Try to hone in on some specialty. Be a master of at least one little area, and pass that information on to the others. And look for the other people who are masters in something completely different and learn from them as well. The more we can share with each other, the better we can make all of this happen. That's really the only thing we have full control of, is just how we learn and what we're going to learn. I got anything to wrap that up?
No, I think we're good.
All right. Questions, comments, concerns, complaints. You can fire those off to our email. That's firefrom2windows@gmail.com. It's all one word, no periods, no hyphens. So it's spelled out. firefrom2windows@gmail.com. Lou, we got an Instagram page.
Yeah.
How's that going?
Surprisingly, one post kind of blew up. It was kind of cool to watch.
That's awesome. I got some text messages.
Yeah.
Said we're famous. I said I don't think so.
No. Far from it.
So just keep paying attention.
Yeah. But yeah,
So
the
that's
Instagram's there.
yep, Fire from Two Windows on Instagram, just at Fire from Two Windows. Excuse me, no numbers, all letters.
Yep.
And you can see us there. Comment or direct message if you got questions. It's probably one of the easiest ways to get a hold of us with a quick response.
It's funny you mentioned. It's talking to one of the guys that I shared his photo because it was a good photo about truck work without the truck, and he's DM me back. He's like, "Well, we had a truck there." I said, "I know. I said you had a truck there, but just the picture alone was you guys throwing ground ladders and you were up on the roof." And I just trying to make a point that you don't need an aerial apparatus to do truck work. And we got talking back and forth, and I was like, I go, "It's funny." He goes, I go, "I spend being like on Instagram is like kind of being like on work. I hate it." He goes, "Yeah," and owns his own company, like a leather company or something like that. And he's like, "Yeah, dude." He goes, "It is a lot of work." He goes, I got to remember to put my phone down." I'm like, "Yeah." I go, "It's funny because we started the Instagram to promote the podcast."
Yeah.
And he was like, "Hey, I just can't get in the podcast." I said, "Yeah, give it a try. There's some short ones out there. Obviously, ours isn't short. Sometimes I wish it was, but I go, there's some short ones out there. If your attention span isn't can last through an hour and a half, 2 hours." I go, but what's funny is I started listening to podcasts, which got me into reading, which got me into doing podcasts, which made me go on freaking Instagram and start doing this stuff. And
Yeah.
I finally got a new book in the mail the other day, so I've been able to. It's been helpful to put my phone down and just disconnect and actually pick up and read a physical book. So I've been happy about that.
I doing the same thing, trying to get back into. Goal is at least one book a month. I'm hoping for two. I want to work my way to getting two a month. I think it's going to be a gradual phase in, and I'm in the process of trying to find my next book. And I happen to realize there was one that I got maybe two chapters in, set it down that you gave me a while back. There's a layer of dust on it, so probably gonna work on that one. But
Yeah, so
yeah,
I
find
ended
us
up.
there.
I'm still waiting on Jim Lechner's book, the Delta Force guy, or the
Yeah,
not Delta. He operated with Delta Force, but so I ended up buying that book. I had a gift card from Christmas, and I know we're kind of going
fantastic.
on about here, but then I was like, oh, I still got like $15 left, and I just happened to just scrolling through, and Orwell's 1984 paperback version was $11, so that's what I'm reading now because I'm still waiting
Oh,
on.
just read that.
Yeah,
Yeah, I just read that a couple months ago. Never have. I don't know how it didn't end up like in grade school or anything. So, anyways, yeah. So make sure you check out the Instagram. That's kind of a place where we're trying to promote the podcast a little bit more for the podcast itself, wherever you listen. So it's Spotify and Apple right now. I think it also regurgitates on something else. Um, Hit that follow, whatever that follow button is, or the little icon to let you know when we put something up. Every time you do select that or you do listen, it starts to generate a little bit more of how do you want to put it? It kind of self promotes. It gets out there to more people. It helps reach more people. And the more people we can reach, the more people we can have a conversation with, the more people we can have on, the more times we can excite you or piss you off. So it depends on what you like for your form of entertainment. Hit that button. With that, I think that's it.
that's
So
it.
just want to say stay safe.
So
See ya.
yeah,